have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And should we give them the notes first or the headlines
let's do
first?
Notes, headlines in a second.
Well, first of all, happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Some of you are settling in on Thanksgiving night after your feasts, in New York anyway.
Yeah. But yes, first a programming note for those of us who see us through the good auspices of Free Speech TV, which distributes us around the country on cable systems and satellite systems.
Free speech is going into one of its pledge months, weeks anyway, starting December 1st to the 21st of December. And so during that period, Gay USA will be televised, and these are Eastern times, Fridays at 10 p.m., Saturdays at 11 p.m., and Sundays at 1 p.m. And our regular schedule will resume on the 22nd.
But in case all that is too much detail for you to follow, we are happy to announce that we now have a Gay USA Facebook page on which we are posting the show every week.
Would you like us? We don't have a lot of likes yet.
You don't have to like us, but you can watch us on that Facebook page.
This was set up by our friend David Nail out in Las Vegas.
North Las Vegas, Nevada, a great friend of the show, and we're extremely grateful to David for facilitating the setup of this Facebook page. We hope it'll make a lot of difference to your ability to communicate with us, to watch the show and write us messages.
So the show's on we'll post the show on Facebook every week. It's on YouTube, which is where we will be linking to. YouTube, and we have a podcast, and
and we have our own website,
too. You have no excuse not to keep up with KUSA. KUSATV.org,
where you can also access the audio version of the podcast, which is also on iTunes.
And if you want to know what's coming up on the show, you write to me, Andy Hum, at AOL.com, and I'll put you on the list. And we thought this was going to be a slow news week, but it turned out to be very busy, starting with the fact that federal judges overturned bans on same-sex marriage in, are you ready, Arkansas and Mississippi.
We thought South Carolina was big last week, but I have to say that I think Mississippi trumps South Carolina.
As they say down there, we won't be last.
Unlike in everything else, they say. Same-sex marriage has, those decisions are stayed, more details in a moment, but same-sex marriage is actually, in effect, the legalization of it in Montana.
And same-sex marriage is supposed to be in effect in Kansas, but Governor Sam Brownback, he can't actually stop the couples from marrying, although it's only up to about 29 counties out of 107. But state agencies will not recognize them under his orders.
Pending appeal.
He is, I don't like to say bad things on Thanksgiving, but he's a lowlife.
He's not on our list of things to give thanks for. We are also, of course, following the horrible developments in Ferguson, Missouri. The failure to indict the police killer of Michael Brown has been widely condemned by LGBT groups. We'll discuss that as we go along.
And LGBT groups have some criticisms of President Obama's executive order on immigration.
And the administration has some criticisms of Gambia's new draconian anti-gay law.
I'm against it, too.
Me, too.
Yes. World AIDS Day is December 1st, Monday. And we will tell you about ways it is being marked with rallies and special TV shows. I'm sure there's something happening in your area.
New statistics from the CDC on people living with HIV and AIDS, and some details on risk levels of various sexual activities.
And I'm going to review the Broadway production of Sideshow, a revival, and Joy Behar's hilarious trip through her life.
Have you given away your opinion?
It's hilarious. I did laugh a lot.
All right, well.
That joy.
We're sort of laughing with astonishment at what happened in Arkansas and Mississippi this week.
Well, let's start in Arkansas since that was first.
Okay.
The federal judge there ruled the state ban on same-sex marriage unconstitutional and put it on hold pending an appeal by the state. Now, he said, I'm not... I'm sorry, I don't have the judge's name in this case. The judge said, well, this is not based on sexual orientation discrimination, which was one of the grounds we were seeking, but on the basis of the right to marry and sex discrimination. This is in the 8th Circuit. But this is a state where 541 couples are already same-sex married.
Because another judge a few months ago struck down the state ban, and there was a window of time before an appeal was filed. In that case, I think that's the state case.
Yes.
So 500 couples got married.
So you'd have to assume the state's going to appeal the federal ruling, but the state Supreme Court may rule on the state ruling by Christmas time.
Got that?
Yeah, I know. They said World War I was going to be over by Christmas too in 1914.
And the reason the federal judge said she couldn't decide this on the basis of sexual orientation discrimination is because of a previous ruling in the 8th Circuit. I've seen this cited in other states too in that circuit, maybe in Missouri or others. Say that some are interpreting as forbidding a sexual orientation discrimination analysis, but that'll all be sorted out by the current 8th Circuit once these appeals are heard there. Then, striking us like a thunderclap, a day or two later, Mississippi, a federal judge struck the ban on same-sex marriage in Mississippi. This is the case argued just 2 weeks ago by Robbie Kaplan, the lawyer who won the Edie Windsor-Doma case at the Supreme Court last year.
Now, this case was brought by the Campaign for Southern Equality versus Bryant, who is the governor of Mississippi who has a gay son, but is anti-gay.
We have touted the work of the Campaign for Southern Equality for months here on this show, and they're a great group of local grassroots activists around the South. You should check out their website at southernequality.org to find out what they're up to all over the South, and a conference that they have coming up too.
So this judge is Carlton Reeves in Mississippi, and he wrote this, and I'm going to read part of this decision because it's quite moving.
And you can read the whole decision on the Campaign for Southern Equality website.
Today's decision may cause uneasiness and concern about the change it will bring. Mississippi continues to change in ways its people could not anticipate even 10 years ago. Allowing same-sex couples to marry, however, presents no harm to anyone. At the very least, it has the potential to support families and provide stability for children. Now, that's a great decision. Now, Mississippi is a problem. Not only doesn't it have civil rights protections for gay people in terms of discrimination, it has that big religious freedom law.
He cited that law as evidence of the discrimination that continues against gay people in Mississippi. He's an African-American judge appointed by Obama, and his entire decision repeatedly references the civil rights movement and talks about the Ku Klux Klan was not only racist but homophobic, talked about Bayard Rustin as a gay black leader who was discriminated against for his homosexuality, talked about the new religious freedom law, talked about segregation, talked about all of these.
Great Mississippi traditions.
Well, he was quite eloquent about all of this. Now, he also stayed his decision to allow the state to appeal.
And the state has appealed to the 5th Circuit.
Yes, this is in the 5th Circuit. Arkansas is in the 8th Circuit. And the 5th Circuit already has cases from Texas and Louisiana In Texas, again, a district court judge had struck their ban. That's being appealed by the state to the Fifth Circuit. In Louisiana, there are mixed decisions. The federal judge upheld the ban on same-sex marriage. We're appealing that. But a state judge overturned the ban. So all of this, Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi will probably wind up in one case at the Fifth Circuit in January.
And the end is near. I mean, you have to think when these kinds of decisions come down and things are coming together that the end is near on this issue, but it's certainly not going to be over for the LGBT rights movement in the South or anywhere else, because there are always issues to fight. Now,
you may have noticed we haven't gotten rid of racism yet either.
Yes, and we will talk about that in the Ferguson case. And we're not getting rid of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She is resting comfortably after heart surgery at the age of 81. She had a stent put in her right coronary artery. She says, I'm talking about her because if we lose her, we could lose this same-sex marriage case.
She's holding on for a Hillary presidency.
Well, she says she still works out with a trainer and that she's going to remain in her position as long as she can do the job full steam. But it would be very tough now if she were to step down for health reasons or other reasons, or die, to be blunt, to confirm an Obama-appointed judge of her liberality.
Well, at this point, it would be hard to confirm any Obama-appointed judge. I think the Republicans would be holding out for 2016 and hoping to elect a president.
Can you delay a Supreme Court justice for 2 years, do you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Give us somebody we can support. That's what they'll say. There are plenty of judges will confirm, give us someone we can support. You must know some of them.
Who are you
That's what the Republicans say. That's what they can say.
And they will delay as long as they want. You may remember the whole Hainsworth, Carswell, all of that delay
Nixon.
we did.
Well, it didn't delay. These were they were rejected.
Yes, but it was a process of delaying until we got someone we could stomach.
Let's continue with the marriage news.
All right. Well, in Montana, a federal judge acknowledged the decision earlier in the Ninth Circuit, of which Montana is a part, and struck the ban on same-sex marriage there. The Democratic governor is thrilled by that decision and ordered licenses issued immediately. However, the Republican Attorney General is unhappy about it and is putting together an appeal while marriage is legal and being performed in Montana.
So and Kansas, which is also, I believe, in the 10th Circuit, right?
Yes.
Which is, they're all supposed to be complying with the 10th Circuit's order on same-sex marriage, but only 29.
In the Colorado and Oklahoma cases.
Only 20,
I'm sorry, Utah and Oklahoma.
Only 29 counties out of about 100 and something are issuing licenses at the moment.
They're saying that there was a decision, but it only applied in a certain county or two, and they're fighting this whole idea that it applies to everybody.
So our side is having to sue the governor and also to get state agencies to recognize the marriages that are happening.
Yep.
Because he is being very difficult.
Obstreperous.
Obstructionist. He's standing in the schoolhouse, the wedding chapel door.
Yeah, but good news from South Carolina. The Supreme Court, South Carolina is in the Fourth Circuit, which was decided by the Virginia case, and judges there said, yes, marriages should proceed, and they tried to appeal it, but the Supreme Court turned down that appeal and said, hey, you're in the Fourth Circuit. We've already decided that. Scalia and Thomas dissented from the rejection of the stay.
They are very unhappy.
You can expect scathing dissents from them should we win a marriage decision at the Supreme Court.
Maybe we'll read some of them if they're nicely written.
I'm looking forward to those. But meanwhile, our friends and loyal viewers, Jimmy Miller and Richard Marshall, who a month earlier were turned down when they applied for a marriage license.
In Lawrence County.
Now received a marriage license and did get married. And about 10 minutes before they were going to get married at home, a news crew got wind of this and showed up for the wedding.
Let's show them.
Show the local news report on this marriage.
please.
South Carolina Attorney General Alan Wilson is also working to reinstate South Carolina's ban on same-sex marriage. He wants the U.S. Supreme Court to have the final say.
But that's not stopping couples from marrying while they can. And Fox Carolina's Derek Dellinger was at one wedding tonight. And Derek, some of these couples are not wasting any time, are they?
No, they are not. Many of the couples we spoke with, some are wanting to take their time with getting a wedding set up, but others, they are just going right on ahead. We caught up with one of those couples in Gray Court tonight. Jimmy Miller and Richard Marshall have been together for around 40 years. They've been engaged for the past 37 years. They applied for the license yesterday in Lawrence County. They got it today and were married in a private ceremony tonight at their home. We've spoken with many same-sex couples who are taking this same route. Now that they have the right to marry, they're doing it, but they're doing it privately. And today means so much to them.
It makes us feel more secure, more together legally, just the same as other opposite-sex spouses, the same rights and abilities.
Miller and Marshall are among several couples we've been in contact with that are marrying this weekend, many telling us, quote, "We've waited long enough." As it stands right now, until and unless the U.S. Supreme Court decides to take action, same-sex couples across South Carolina will have the right to apply and get marriage licenses. Cody and Diana, back to you.
Ain't love grand?
Congratulations to Jimmy and Richard.
Fantastic, and for being such trailblazers.
And the Ninth Circuit has again, for I think the third time, rejected the request by the National Organization for Marriage to intervene in the Oregon marriage cases.
Well, also in the Ninth Circuit, Alaska, the Ninth Circuit rejected an en banc review, so it goes to a three-judge panel there, and Art Leonard, who we had on the show the other week, said, "Give up now. Stop wasting the taxpayers' money." Speaking of which, in Utah...
If the situation were reversed, we would not be giving up.
Speaking of which, in Utah, they have now spent, the state, $400,000 fighting same-sex marriage and have to pay $95,000 to attorneys for the other side. I'd like to meet your attorneys. They're much more expensive in New York.
And a little footnote, the New York Times Magazine did a profile, a slobbering profile on Chris Christie last week. And one of the things the reporter on the article said was, Chris Christie didn't stop the marriage bill in New Jersey.
No, he vetoed it. He vetoed it. I mean, I think what the Dumkopf mistook for is that once the court ruled that they had to do it, he gave up.
He didn't appeal the ruling.
He didn't want to waste the taxpayers' money.
Yeah,
and
but
he wants
you
to
gave
use that
him a
on closing the George Washington Bridge.
Yeah, a little too much credit for Governor Christie.
So you can marry in 35 states now. We're getting there.
And it keeps climbing.
All right.
Well, and it's certainly well over half the country in terms of population.
So let's talk about the rest of the gay news. Well, you know, all over the news this week was Ferguson, and you know, we're not going to replay all the arguments there, other than to say that the Gay Incorporated, all the big LGBT groups, Lambda, the Human Rights Campaign, all issued statements of concern and sometimes horror at what's going on and all that kind of stuff, and that's great. You know, because, you know, this racism is horrible and endemic.
Certainly the minimum they could do.
But the question is, are our groups going to put these issues on their agenda and start rating, when HRC does a rating of a politician, how they're voting on police issues and gun issues and all these other kinds of things, the militarization of the police, are we going to make it our issues? Because we are all in this together. And, you know, what people are going through in terms of abuse by police that is racially motivated is horrible.
I think it's an excellent idea that HRC should be rating politicians on those kinds of votes, and I am equally sure that when confronted with this question, their response will be, we just rate on LGBT issues, as if this is not an LGBT issue.
I mean, some of the groups certainly take women's reproductive rights into consideration. I think Victory Fund does somewhat. But we are all in this together, folks, and that's the only way we're going to advance.
And you know, I don't, you know, you don't need us to relitigate this, but I'd be sorry if I didn't speak out publicly and say how horrified I am by this, and how over and over and over again we see what I like to call the perpetuating hierarchy, people in power who reinforce their own power and see everybody else as the enemy and keep them out. And, you know, why that cop didn't just drive away or call for reinforcements, for him to say that he had to get out of his car and shoot the guy another 10 times is so horrifying.
Right.
And to sit there and say it with such assurance and such conviction that he did the right thing.
And in terms of justice, police officers who don't minimize the fact that you've got tough jobs, the cops out there, but who are indicted, you know, rarely get convicted. But the least we could have had in a case like this is a trial of the evidence.
Exactly.
Not this behind-the-scenes grand jury stuff from a prosecutor who obviously did not want this guy indicted and made it happen. Because prosecutors usually want somebody indicted, and they make that happen.
The people who are in the system see those outside the system as enemies, and particularly when they are people of color, and particularly when they are young men of color. And the mindset that sends out armed officers of the state to go control and in the end shoot and kill people, particularly these young men of color, but also, you know, transgender women of color are particular targets too. It is just, it makes me want to tear my hair out, do something, I don't know, but it's just, one wonders.
And if you don't think these are LGBT issues, I mean, wait till we get to the AIDS statistics to talk about later and how it disproportionately affects men of color and women of color.
And our analysis of the AIDS epidemic and the Vietnam War and the women's movement and civil rights has always been that people in power don't care about anyone else, and they're perfectly happy to let people die or shoot them down or whatever.
Well,
Happy Thanksgiving.
And, well, you know, and not a completely new insight, and some of it has been mentioned on the air, but again, prosecutors in this country are dependent on the police for their investigations of the crimes, so they always have a chummy relationship, and they don't want to antagonize each other.
Right.
And we need independent prosecutors for every case. This is something that is done elsewhere in the world.
Right.
All right.
Okay.
Immigration reform.
All right. Well, Obama did his executive order on immigration, canceling deportation essentially for 5 million people in family situations. It was basically people who've emigrated here, had children. The kids are legal because they're born in this country, and he's stopping the parents from being deported. And that's a great and terrific thing. And again, all our groups applauded that. But what they pointed out is that this is not often helpful to, for instance, LGBT people seeking asylum, coming to this country without documentation because they are fleeing Uganda, Russia, Honduras.
You name it.
And this executive order will do nothing for them. And so they want a broader order that will rescue people like that.
And that embraces all LGBT families.
Yes.
Okay.
And the statistics are, you think this is just a few people? 267,000 LGBT people seeking asylum in this country right now.
Okay. You want some more statistics?
Okay.
So they did a study on U.S. non-gays. They want to see gay rights, but not gay kisses, not public displays of affection. Now, here are the stats. 95% of people approve of non-gay public displays of affection, but they approve of only 55% of gay male PDAs, and 72% they like lesbian PDAs.
This is not a headline.
And then, support for marriage, same-sex marriage, this is important. 99% actually support heterosexual marriage. There's 1% that doesn't, and I know some of who you are. 53% support gay male marriage, and 59% support lesbian marriage. Well, I think these statistics are interesting.
If you want to read this study, it's published in the American Sociological Review. It's a study out of Indiana University. It's a study of 1,000 people in the U.S., which is not a very big study statistically.
Okay.
Interesting interview with Ted Osius, confirmed last week as ambassador to Vietnam, out gay man, starting at the end of the year. He will be living in Hanoi with his African-American husband, who is a career Foreign Service officer, and their adopted Latino one-year-old son, and Ted's mother.
Well,
that is a diverse family to send to Vietnam.
Well, Vietnam's been making some progress on LGBT
Absolutely,
issues.
no question.
Got parades there and everything.
We are sending a rainbow coalition to Vietnam.
Speaking of interviews, Michael Sam, the out gay football player from Missouri who was cut from the NFL, now says he wishes he had not come out the way he did. He said that he would have if he had to do it over again, he would have just done what he did in Missouri, in college, just told his coaches and his teammates and left it at that. He feels that's what he's saying now.
Well, given the study you just cited, maybe what he should have done is not planted that big kiss on his boyfriend when he was drafted.
That was your proudest moment, and you shouldn't be sorry about that.
Well, I do believe that we increase our acceptance on things like public displays of affection through desensitization. The more they see it, the more used to it they become. And I haven't heard any regrets from country star Ty Herndon, who has come out at the age of 52. He's got a new album out called Lies, I Told Myself. He actually had a couple of marriages to women in order to hide. And he's very explicit about that.
We do have a picture of Ty Herndon somewhere, a little out of order. There he is.
But his new album is Lies, I Told Myself. He says he's now out, proud, and happy, and sober. He went through a period of drug and alcohol addiction. He's 52. Now, half his age, Billy Gilman, another country singer, has come out at age 26. He says he's scared to death to come out, not because he isn't proud to be gay, he is, but he's a country singer, and he's afraid of what's going to happen to him in his genre.
As with
Shelley Wright, who came out, who is, happy, popular person, but doesn't have much of a country career at the moment.
A less happy story.
Please correct me if I'm wrong about that.
A less happy story comes to us from Portland, Oregon. This is a scandal involving a founder of the Victory Fund and HRC. His name is Terrence Bean, 66. He is accused of having a sexual encounter with a 15-year-old boy. This is what he's been charged with. Now, all this came about, we have a picture of him and his former boyfriend.
That's not the 15-year-old.
No, this is Kaya Loy Lawson, who was also charged. Now, there was an investigation that was going on for 6 months in this case because there were allegations, because Kaya went after him, and because
Kaya turned Terry in. Now, Terry says that Kaya was trying to practice extortion on him.
He was.
And
wait a minute. Let's slow down. Kaya found a taping system in the house of sexual encounters and got jealous, and this is what he was extorting him over. And they were going to settle for $40,000, but then somehow the police got involved. And when the police got involved, one of the things they turned up was this supposed encounter with a 15-year-old boy that they met on Grindr or something.
Kaya told the police about that. That was part of his revenge against Terry.
At a hotel, so I don't know if there's tape on that. But it's a big mess.
Terry denies it.
Everything.
Says this is all made up by Lawson.
Who has a long criminal record. And a record of attacking ex-boyfriends.
Yep.
But you should have Googled him before you...
It's a mess. It is a real mess.
Yeah. And the right wing is having a field day since he's a founder of HRC.
Yeah. And a big Democratic Party donor.
The biggest donor to the... we have a picture of him and the president on Air Force One.
Yep.
He is the biggest donor to the Democratic Party in Oregon.
Yeah.
All right.
So that's ugly.
Some other news, some better news?
Latta, South Carolina. You remember where the lesbian police chief was fired by the new mayor, and she said it was because he was homophobic, and he said, no, she just, whatever. And then she was reinstated.
Well, it's now the smallest town in South Carolina to pass a law protecting LGBT folks from discrimination in the public sector, which is often how cities start before they get to protecting everybody.
In Idaho, this makes me laugh. You remember Idaho Senator Larry Craig, arrested in the Minneapolis airport.
Wide stance.
For soliciting sex with men in the restroom in the airport.
Denies being gay.
For which we believe he should never have been arrested, by the way.
Correct.
always denied being gay. The Republican Party of Idaho has now made him the financial chair of their executive committee. He's been making his living in recent years as a lobbyist for the timber and energy industries. I just find it interesting that the Idaho Republican Party has taken this not very proud, self-denying gay man.
Exactly.
And made him the financial chair of the executive committee.
How long have you been doing this show?
A long, 18 years, 19 almost.
Self-hatred is much admired in the right wing of the Republican Party.
I don't know.
Well, there was the congressman from Mississippi back in the 80s. I'm not sure if I'm going to get his name, but he was caught in a men's room with a guy and having sex, and he was arrested, and he confessed and he said, "I'm sorry," and he got reelected in Mississippi. But then he did it again, and then he had resigned, and he became a lobbyist on AIDS issues, and then he died of AIDS. And I'm sorry, I'm not remembering his name.
Well, contrarily,
you'll tell me out there.
In Nevada, or we'll remember it in the next half hour.
Yes,
The Republican Party had a big sweep in Nevada, took over a lot of political power there in the last election. So the new Speaker of the Assembly was supposed to be Ira Hansen, Republican, I assume.
Yes, absolutely.
But then they found out that Ira had a few things to say in recent years, racist things, sexist things, and anti-gay things.
He called blacks darkies. He flies the Confederate flag in his office.
Ah, yes, proudly.
He called us, homosexuals here, a threat to children. And he calls the campaign to bring him down character assassination. Well, these are, facts.
You'd think some of what he said was character assassination. So he has had to step down as Speaker-elect, but he's not losing his seat in the Assembly. He'll be there to say all these things for years to come.
And then there's the fire chief in Atlanta,
Kelvin Cochran. Kelvin Cochran.
Yeah, Kelvin Cochran. He was suspended without pay for 1 month because he wrote what he calls a religious book calling homosexuality a perversion like pederasty and bestiality. Mayor Qasim Reed, I guess his name is, called the sentiments disturbing.
I've said I don't think your handwriting is legible, and now I find that even you cannot read your handwriting.
Sometimes I can't. I do print these in large letters, but sometimes I can't.
I'm perplexed by the title of his book. Who told you that you were naked?
That's biblical.
Yeah, I guess so.
That's what.
He's being required to undergo sensitivity training. On the other hand, in the New York City Fire Department, it turns out we have a rookie firefighter, Jonathan Jasensky, who used...
Jareski. Yes? No? Did I write it down wrong? All right,
maybe it's Jarensky. I have it Jasensky, but whatever. Let's call
Jonathan.
The whole thing
well,
off.
wait a minute. Let's give his stage name, Jonathan West, which is probably how many of you know him.
Because he starred in 10 gay porn films. He's also an ex-Marine. He says he's actually straight.
A lot of people.
And he's a former EMT, but
he's gay for pay.
He is, and or so he says, and he announced all this in his resume, I guess.
No, I think he talked about it. So look, is this going to be a problem? Well, don't forget
the New York City Fire Department said no, it's not a problem.
The fire department does a charity calendar every year of guys, pinup guys.
But didn't they forbid people to participate in that?
It is the civil service with the most men who work out, because I think that's what they do in the firehouse while they're waiting to go out and fight fires.
Get very buff. In Maryland, a couple of lesbians in the legislature have been appointed to high political posts. Delegate Ann Kaiser was appointed House Majority Leader, and Delegate Maggie McIntosh was appointed Chair of the House Appropriations Committee.
And then there's the New York...
Because they like the lesbians, and we're taking over.
And then there's the New York City Human Rights Commission, appointed by Mayor de Blasio. The new chair is Carmelyn Malalis, a private attorney who was co-chair of the firm's LGBT Workplace Rights Practice Group, member of the LGBT Rights Project at the Human Rights Watch, chair of the New York City Bar Association Committee on LGBT. I think she's a lesbian.
I certainly hope so.
And she's a board member of the now defunct Queers for Economic Justice. Now, there's also unpaid commissioners there who include Anna Oliveira of New York Women's Foundation, who's an out lesbian, and
former head of GMHC.
And Rabbi Sharon Kleinbaum of the congregation Beth Simchat Torah, the gay and lesbian LGBT synagogue. So there may be more, but we don't know everybody in the community. Imagine that. It's a big city.
Are you familiar with this video game app, Ass Hunter?
I am not familiar with any apps.
Well, this, it turns out, has been available online since 2002, but was recently picked up by Google as a free offer and immediately canceled.
Here's how it works. It allows players to shoot naked gay men dead as they try to molest you. This is somebody's idea of a game. How did it? And nobody objected out there?
For 12 years, nobody has objected until now. Continuing talk about the murder in Greensboro, North Carolina. Stephen White was the guy in his 40s who picked up Gary Gupton at a bar, 26, and went home with him or went to a hotel.
Got burned.
Yeah.
I mean, literally burned.
Beaten, burned.
Set afire.
So there was some discussion of whether this should be classified as a hate crime. But Gary, it turns out, is maybe mentally ill, maybe gay, self-loathing, inexperienced, young, scared, and so this has become a complicated case. Yes. Not that we're saying, you know, people should murder each other. But,
in Peoria, Illinois, there was an arrest in the murder of a gay nightclub owner, Todd Scholl. He owned Berlin and Diesel. He was 47. They arrested a 29-year-old Ryan Stewart. It was an arson case as well.
Back to national news, a group of retired generals, an admiral, and a bunch of LGBT organizations are confronting the Defense Department. They say that they issued a new regulation this year that said you can exclude people from service only for real reasons, not sort of categorically, but only if they are, if who they are or what they do impairs their fitness to serve. And they're saying this should be interpreted to allow transgender people to serve in the military because their being transgender does not impair their fitness to serve or be deployed. Right. And they are saying that the services are not following this new regulation, or not making use of this to employ transgender service members, and so they're going after them.
They were automatically excluded, and they essentially considered it a medical condition.
Yes.
And that was the reason, but that's not a good reason. It's not a medical condition.
And the new regulation should clarify that, but it's not being effectuated.
And of course you read that Chuck Hagel is out as Defense Secretary. We'd been worried about his anti-gay past, but there was you know, some movement on our issues, and I don't think he acquitted himself badly on our stuff.
Absolutely
despite
not.
our misgivings.
Yeah. By the way, in San Francisco, there is a new organization, a crisis and suicide hotline for transgender people or questioning people, staffed by transgender people. It's called the Trans Lifeline, and you can access that by calling 877-565-8860. That is a free national hotline, Trans Lifeline, 877-565-8860.
And in Syracuse, New York, the case of the murder of a transgender woman, Letitia Green, in 2008, the assailant was convicted of first-degree murder and then let go on a technicality. And there was some question whether there was going to be retried. Well, the Court of Appeals in New York ruled that he will be retried. And I have a correction from a couple of weeks ago. You know, Archbishop of Philadelphia, Catholic, I was calling him Chaput, C-H-A-P-U-T. A viewer corrected me. It is Chaput. Chaput. Bishop Chaput, and he stinks. because he's very bad.
Correction coming up for me in entertainment news.
All right.
But meanwhile, in international news, the Gambia, bad, rounding up lesbians and gays because the president, who has promised the extermination of lesbians and gays,
President Jama,
has signed the new bill that criminalizes homosexuality even more than it was before.
Well, before it was 14 years in prison. Now it's life in prison for what they call aggravated homosexuality, and the U.S. State Department is condemning it. But, you know, there's recent reports of arresting 4 men, a 17-year-old boy, and 9 women for homosexual acts. They're
torturing them, forcing them
raping,
to name others.
Beaten and raped.
The president is bragging that he is cutting ties with the United Kingdom and the United States. He's aligning with the Middle East. This is too much of the trend.
And in Uganda, they're drafting the new anti-gay law. They want it passed as a, quote, Christmas gift to Ugandans, part of the Keep Bigotry in Christmas movement that you may have heard about.
ISIS in Syria, the Islamic State, has claimed to stone to death 2 gay men. There's some question about whether this is, you know, they're using this charge that they were gay just as a pretext to kill opponents, but they're murdering a lot of people.
Right. In Russia, they are prosecuting the online gay youth forum Children 404 for violating the anti-propaganda law. If found guilty, they'll be offline. Now, this just says for 90 days, and they get a $21,000 fine. That'll break them, because it's a lot of money over there. And they could be shuttered permanently.
I don't see why they'd let them go back into business after 90 days if they are shutting them down. Meanwhile, Matthew Shepard's parents are on their way to St. Petersburg to the LGBT Film Festival, where they're going to be present for the showing of a new documentary called Matthew Shepard is a Friend of Mine. They're also planning to go to Moscow and meet with parents of LGBT kids. We'll see how that goes. Speaking
of productions, Cuba is getting a production of Rent with an all-Cuban cast. It's the first full-time Broadway production in 50 years there, and it is full of gay and AIDS themes, as you know.
It certainly is.
It's directed by Andy Senor, who played, it was an Angel? I think they called the character Angel on Angel on Broadway and in the West End.
Be very interesting to see how that turns out.
Yes.
We told you last week that in Mexicali, Baja, California, in Mexico, they were going to be performing same-sex marriages. Well, a gay male couple showed up to be married and were rejected by the local official. I love this picture.
There they are, looking pretty despondent, as you would be too if your wedding was canceled.
Yeah, the official said, oh, the paperwork was screwy, the witnesses, whatever, and they sent them away. So there is now some furor in Mexicali over that. In Bangalore, India, which is the 3rd largest city in India, 2,000 people showed up at the Pride March, and they're angry there because of the recriminalization of homosexuality. So this was a real protest march, not just a party. And they have in the past marched with masks because they were concealing their identity out of fear. And no masks this year. They're out there, they're angry, they're demanding freedom and the overturning of the law.
Good news from South Africa in that the man who raped and murdered a black lesbian who was 26 years old, her name was Dudazile Zozo, was sentenced to 30 years in prison. This case really woke up the government to this epidemic that they have there of what's called corrective rape.
We'll see whether it woke them up. But the judge, and there's some disappointment that the sentence wasn't longer for murder and rape. The judge said LGBT people just want to be left alone. No one has the right to correct anyone else.
The disabled runner is not, what kind of sentence is he getting? Yeah, what's he getting for his killing?
Just a few years.
Girlfriend. Oh, and the Pope spoke to the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and he spoke, here's the quote from the Pope. He spoke of the growing mistrust on the part of citizens toward institutions considered to be aloof, engaged in laying down rules perceived as insensitive to individual peoples, if not downright harmful.
Would that be the Vatican?
Exactly. What the hell are you lecturing to the European Parliament when you've got all this anti-gay, anti-woman rules?
Yeah.
Come on.
All right. AIDS news?
Yeah.
All right. Monday, December 1st, World AIDS Day. On the one hand, we used to sort of heap contempt on the idea that they would pick out like one day to be World AIDS Day. But given the extent to which AIDS is sort of under the radar these days, I'm grateful that there's World AIDS Day to remind people that we still have an epidemic in this world.
There's going to be a big gathering for the end of AIDS at the Apollo Theater in Harlem.
A gathering for the end of AIDS. That doesn't sound right.
Well, this is a campaign for the end of AIDS,
Yes.
to end it by 2020, and they've really got a plan for it.
Sort of.
The mayor's going to be there, a lot of people. It's a big event. It's at 253 West 125th Street, if you don't know where the Apollo is.
That's Monday at 10
Free and
a.m.
open to the public.
Yeah. The City Council in New York is also having a shindig on Wednesday the 3rd.
There's a movie about the AIDS quilt, a documentary. It's going to be on Showtime on December 1st, called The Last One, and it's also available on iTunes that day.
Showtime, 8:30 Monday night, The Last One. Interesting figures out of the CDC. You get this stuff in connection with World AIDS Day.
At cdc.gov, you can read them for yourselves.
Yeah. They say that there are currently 1.2 million people living with HIV in the United States. 14% of them don't know it. The African-American population, especially young men having sex with men, are the most affected.
Well, they say there are 50,000 new infections a year. In 2012, for instance, 47,989 were diagnosed with HIV. 27,928 were diagnosed with AIDS, which means that a lot of people who have HIV are not getting on the drugs and therefore are developing AIDS still. And of those 27,928, 11,200 were white, 10,600 were black, and 6,700 Latino, and that's obviously way out of proportion to who they are in the population. Right. So it's and here's a statistic: the total number who have died in the United States from AIDS is 648,459. I think that's about like what we lost in World War II or something.
And
like
half
that.
of them are gay men. Yes.
And of course, some of those deaths may not be related to AIDS, because people are on drugs and they die of other things. But,
In 2011, 14,000 people with AIDS died. 5,300 of those men who have sex with men. This is continuing, and it is, to me, this does relate to Ferguson. This is the whole sweep of the people in power who are not. We hear all these statistics about this disproportionately affecting young black gay men. Where are the ads? Where is the education? Where is the urgency?
Where is the health care?
Where is the health care? Where is any of this? And it just isn't there. And there's a lot of lip service and money going God knows where, but it's not reducing the new infection rates or helping people already infected.
And the CDC at their website, cdc.gov, also published statistics that they've been able to develop on the relative risk of various activities if you engage in sex with an infected person or other activities for transmitting HIV.
Unprotected sex.
Yes. Well, yes, unprotected sex. So if you engage in, and this is out of 10,000 encounters, all right? 138 of those would lead to, of receptive anal intercourse would lead to an HIV infection. If it was insertive anal intercourse, 11 out of 10,000 would lead to an HIV infection. Receptive vaginal, 8. Insertive vaginal, 4. Receptive or insertive oral, they just put the word low. Now, they also say that biting, spitting, throwing body fluids, and sharing sex toys is essentially rated negligible. They don't say 0, but they say negligible. Obviously, there's always, there's always some chance, some remote chance in almost, anything. Because basically what I always tell people when they start asking me questions about transmission is, I said, if the virus gets into your bloodstream, that's how you get infected. And it is not an act that causes that. It is
the transmission of infected fluids.
So there's other ways
into a vulnerable spot.
So take those into consideration. There are other things that people need to be concerned about, like PrEP. AIDS United Public Policy Committee called for they want to really elevate PrEP as the proof of effectiveness is growing.
Pre-exposure prophylaxis, taking drugs to prevent infection with HIV.
They think we need to scale it up, but it remains unknown and underutilized by the people most likely to benefit from it. 80% of gay and bisexual men only know a little or nothing about PrEP. 80%.
Exactly. And you wonder why. Well, a memo came to light this week from 1987 from Gary Bauer to then President Ronald Reagan.
Gary Bauer was a horrible right-winger who was hired as the chief domestic policy advisor for President Reagan, who was a war criminal in the AIDS crisis.
He was, and they were putting together the first presidential AIDS commission because under the public spotlight and pressure, they felt the need to put together a meaningless presidential AIDS commission.
So they hired a lot of right-wing cranks, and notably John Cardinal O'Connor, the Catholic Archbishop, complete right-wing nut. That really drew attention to the fact that this panel had no credibility.
Well,
we protested at St. Patrick's over that right away.
The memo from Gary Bauer to President Reagan advised him not, urged him not to put any homosexuals on the first presidential
Because
AIDS commission.
yes, these are the people most affected by it, but they're the ones who are spreading it, Gary Bauer said. What a horror show he was. But he was ignored on that. Some people think because Nancy whispered in Ronnie's ear, my hairdresser says, no, seriously,
yes,
you've got to appoint a gay. So they found Frank Lilly up in the Bronx. We had him on this show. I remember the interview very well, mostly because we were schwitzing so much because we were in Lou Milletta's studio house or something where we're doing it, and it was so hot that day. It's nice and cold in here, let me tell you.
It certainly is. And
Frank Lilly.
We were sorry to hear about the death of Brad Crelia, 29 years old, AIDS activist. He was co-founder of a website called HIVstir.com. He lived in Spokane. He died of AIDS-related complications. He had just been named to the PAWS 100 for 2014.
There's a picture of him. He wrote on that website, "We believe that living life to the fullest is essential to everyone, especially those who are HIV positive. The disease is only part of one's life, and it is important to remember the things we love." Okay.
Well, entertainment news, if we may make that segue. I want to start with a correction. I fell for what evidently was a hoax last week when I, with a straight face, repeated the rumor that Disney was making a movie, an animated movie, out of the book Princes, P-R-I-N-C-E-S.
Sounded plausible to me, because as I said, there are so many gays working over there at Disney.
And they, they've done gay movies, but yes. This turns out to be not true. The book is real, but they are not making a film of it yet.
They are just going to continue to insinuate into children's programming gay positive themes that you won't often recognize.
Congratulations to Sean Hayes. You'll remember him from Will and Grace and a lot of other stuff. He married his long-term partner, Scott Eisnogel. They've been together 8 years. He's a music producer. I think we have a picture of Sean his husband,
And Sean
Scott.
is an actor.
He is an actor and a producer. He's put together.
He played Jerry Lewis once in the movies.
We don't seem to be getting that picture up. So
all right, it's all right. You know what Sean Hayes looks like. You can Google him, you'll find it.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a picture up of Sideshow, which is a play I saw on Broadway this week. Ah, there it is. The women in the middle there are playing conjoined twins. That's Erin Davey and Emily Paget, who sing and play beautifully in this show. This is, it's a revival of a Bill Russell, Henry Krieger musical, directed by Bill Condon, the out gay director of movies like Dreamgirls and Kinsey. This is about the Hilton sisters, and they move from a freak show to vaudeville, and it deals with outsiders based on race and sexual orientation as well. And it's a very crowd-pleasing traditional Broadway musical. So.
I was horrified to read about what happened at the National Book Awards ceremony to my friend and former softball teammate, Jackie Woodson. She won the National Book Award for young people's literature for her memoir, Brown Girl Dreaming. Jackie's African-American. The host of the event, Daniel Handler, who is Lemony Snicket, children's book author, very famous.
Yes.
He gets up, gives her the award, and says, I told Jackie she was going to win, and I said that if she won, I would tell all of you something I learned about her this summer, which is that Jackie Woodson is allergic to watermelon. Just let that sink in your mind. He's had to apologize.
It's terrible.
He's admitted that was a horribly racist thing to say. He's had to make donations. But congratulations, Jackie, because you're a wonderful writer. And Brown Girl Dreaming won the National Book Award, and you should all get it.
It's like Fuzzy Zeller's fried chicken comment with Tiger.
Yeah.
All right, so Joy Behar's show. She's off The View, but she's on the stage of the historic Cherry Lane Theater in the Village with Me, My Mouth, and I. We have a picture of Joy there. It's a trip through her improbable life, from her Italian roots in Brooklyn to the big time, with lots of hilarious bumps in the way. Joy tells us about her work as a secretary at Good Morning America with Ann Northrup.
I sat at a desk next to her and made a lot of fun.
Where she was part of Lesbian Hour.
Yeah.
Her near-death experiences on stage and off, her gay fan base, and how her tough questions on The View, where she held court for 16 years, which I think is a record, scared away some politicians.
Oh, yes.
She dishes some of her former colleagues at The View, including Barbara Walters and, of course, Star Jones, and she's delightfully honest throughout the show. It's an hour and a half of joy. What more could you ask for?
I want to recommend a little independent movie opening in Brooklyn this Friday, December 5th, or next Friday, December 5th. The Foxy Merkins. It is hilarious. It's a little lesbian movie, and it's like lesbian hookers standing outside Talbot's to pick up.
It's good?
It's a riot.
I'm sorry, I missed my
funny.
opportunities to see it in previews.
And we should also acknowledge the death of Mike Nichols because he made a couple of wonderful things. Angels in America, obviously.
For HBO.
Fundamentally important movie. Tony Kushner's plays, and Silkwood, which of course had the lesbian relationship between Cher and Meryl Streep.
Right.
But he also made the execrable The Birdcage.
Not good, Mike. But Mike Nichols was a genius and did a lot of tremendous work and was working on stuff when he died.
Yes.
So condolences to Diane Sawyer.
And we will continue working on stuff and bring it to you next week. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.